Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Act 3 on CHLY 101.7 FM. I'm Kathy Holmes. I'm proud to be your host with you week after week on this show. And we're really, really glad that you tune in every Monday at 1 o'clock. Last week, we left you with a little bit of a cliffhanger. So we had a couple of guests. We had Trish Hope Bingham and Tammy Nutting were both with us last week. We were talking about being transparent and trans. And unfortunately, this week, we'll be missing Tammy. So we want Tammy to know that we wish she could have come back with us this week. Unfortunately, she had a prior engagement and wasn't able to join us. But still with me in the booth is Trish, or the Zoom booth, I should say, is Trish Hope Bingham. We're going to continue our conversation about being trans and what that means. And we're going to break over some pretty, interesting, I think interesting, quite fascinating, actually, parts of today's conversation. Welcome back to the program, Trish. Thanks for coming back.
Thank you, Kathy.
It's great to see you again. I know it's only been a week, but the interest in last week's program was so extraordinary on both sides. I heard that you were messaged like crazy. I was messaged like crazy. What we ended up having to cut the show early, right in the middle of you telling us some really key pieces. And so I feel bad that our show had to end quickly. Having said that, why don't we bring our listeners that may not have heard the first episode? Let's bring them up to date. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey?
Started out 6 years ago, this coming February. I pretty much, when I first came out, it was very hard because I was outed by somebody else.
Yeah.
So it wasn't really, how do you say, it wasn't really what timing I wanted to do, right? But anyway, and then I was, well, it was a roller coaster for the next 3 years for sure. I was homeless. I was dragged into the sex trade. It was, it was tough. And then, but I kept on pushing. Kept going forward and making this count, kind of thing.
I think the making it count part is about you wanting people to be their authentic selves, as difficult as that journey can be. Because I know when we were last talking, that was a big piece, is that you weren't feeling in the process before coming out and facing the divorce and the job and like just all of it. You were not truly your authentic self. I'll remind our listeners that you were a truck driver, but you're completely 360 from who you are today. You find yourself sort of now knowing that things are in a completely different environment to what you'd been accustomed to, and facing not only the surgery, but the stigma also that goes with coming out and being trans. And also, I'll mention to our listeners, you're no small fry. You're definitely a person of substance in every way.
I call myself a linebacker.
A linebacker. I know, that's right. You called yourself a linebacker. I prefer when you say it, because as a woman, you don't look like a linebacker to me. So I'm careful. I don't want to step over that. And part of the reason why this conversation broke open the way it did is that there's a lot of questions that community doesn't know how to ask, or people don't know how to ask. And so it's the hope of this program again today to sort of break open some of those, put the stigmas aside and let's talk about some stuff. So I'm gonna again, not to redo that whole first show. I don't want to do that, obviously, because we left you off where you had made the change, you'd gone over the surgery. But just as we were going there, you were telling us about some of those early relationships and what was happening for you while you were in the sex trade. So I wonder if you could bring us back to that period just for a bit before we move on to the next new business. So, you said in our last program, you talked about all of a sudden you were homeless, you were living in your truck, and you ended up in the sex trade. Let's talk about that.
Talk about the sex trade.
Well, you being drawn into it, and then sort of your
Yeah.
experiences there, and
Well,
moving out of it into,
right,
hopefully the life that you're wanting to be
right.
today.
Well, what happened? I had no money. I had no job.
Yeah.
Right. And I knew somebody that was a sex worker.
Mm.
And we talked, and it was all set up. And within an hour, I was already working this. And I was like, oh my God,
So that,
terrified.
I was going to say, so that first time must have been really terrifying for you.
Uh,
Did it ever get any easier?
uh, Not really. I mean, um, I had some men that were regulars,
Mm-hmm.
so that was okay. That I wasn't so afraid of opening the
Yeah.
door.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but there's some really, really scary times.
Yeah.
You know?
Do a lot of people that go through, and again, I want to be as transparent as possible, and I also want to be as honest as possible. I know
Mhm.
nothing about any of this. This part of this conversation is not only, it's not to be voyeuristic in any way, it's to
No.
understand, because we both know that when we open up the door and we're able to talk confidently about things, then that stigma can disappear. It's about knowledge. And I clearly know nothing. And I'm very comfortable in knowing nothing. So I'm not trying to be voyeuristic. But in that process of our breaking open that conversation, you were talking about having regulars and sort of not being afraid. But you also talked at the end of our last show, we've sort of begun the bridge of that really tough stuff that was starting to happen for you. Some assaults were taking place. And I know for our listeners who've just tuned into the show, I would encourage you to go back and listen to the first program so that you can sort of catch up to where we are now. How did you deal, first of all, because there's not a lot of resources, I don't think, for trans currently. There are some, but there's not a lot. How did you make your way through not only moving into the sex trade, but some of the violence that went along with it?
Well, like I said, I can handle myself, right? So I'm pretty confident in my abilities to look after myself.
Yeah.
Um, so that sort of carried me through, but still, um, there's times when you could be in trouble and you're not getting out of it.
Yeah. Did that happen very much in the beginning, or did it,
It happened once.
and once was
Um,
enough? Yeah.
yeah, I got called to an out call out on
I,
Nanaimo Lakes Road,
I don't know what an out call is. What's that mean?
going out to them,
Oh, I see. As opposed to having them, right. Okay.
and got there and got in the door, and there was 5 guys there,
Oh my God.
fairly big guys, and they told me I wasn't leaving. And I said, oh, yep, I am. And I grabbed the first guy that was closest to me, and I hit him so hard I knocked him out. And I just said, who's next? And then I opened up the door and walked out. But, another transsexual girl, smaller than me, would have been done.
Yeah, would not have survived it. Do many trans go missing?
Uh, Not here,
Mhm.
but last year when we had the Transgender Day of Remembrance,
Yes, which is
it
coming up
was,
again soon. Yeah.
yeah, um, it was like 368 names on the
Wow.
list of murdered uh, by either suicide, murder, uh, or something else. There was 3 different categories of them. And then, of course, the night that we were holding it was the night of that shooting in Colorado.
Yeah.
where 5 more were added to the list. And yeah, that's tough. The one that's coming up in March
Yeah.
on 31st, that's Transgender Day of Visibility.
Transgender Day of Visibility.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that one there, we march from City Hall down to Maffeo Park and have a little gathering down there at the end, and then we all go home. It's just a matter of getting ourselves out there and being visible.
Absolutely. And that's been part of what this whole conversation is about, right? Is getting visible and having people more comfortable. Do you find that people are comfortable around you now, Trish, more than they were before as you're becoming more you? Or, what does that look like? What did it look like from 3 years before to where you are now? Because this has been a 6-year process, including surgery and all that other stuff, which we'll talk about a little bit more coming up. But, so in this 3-year process, is there a stark difference in the way that people are with you?
When I first came, it was hard to look at myself, right?
Yeah.
I looked in the mirror and went, well, you'll get beautiful. Don't worry, right?
But you are beautiful.
I know, but back then I had to say in the mirror, don't worry, you'll get beautiful.
Yeah, I would imagine, as coming from the linebacker mentality, being a big, burly, truck driving kind of beer drinking Friday night guy.
Yeah.
To now wearing a dress and finding you have woman parts and talk about, and it makes me curious about the psychology that went around that too. I'm really glad you brought that up. As silly as that sounds, that I'm glad that you brought up the way that you first looked at yourself.
Right.
But in truth, that's a huge process in itself.
It is. And it's a long drawn out process that you have to, you have to come to a point where you love yourself more than anything else itself. You love yourself.
Yeah.
And that's when you look in the mirror.
And then you no longer see gender at all.
No.
Yeah.
I just see me.
Yeah.
Right. And I just carried on every day. When I first came out, it was like 2 weeks after I came out, I think it was. No, it was only a week after I came out. I went to the Queen's Hotel for a burlesque show. And I thought to myself, why would I go to the Queen's Hotel looking like this? Somebody in there will kill me for sure. Probably one of my friends. And then I walked in there and it was like totally different.
In what way? How was it different?
The place was identical, but all the people were different. Right? It was all LGBTQ friendly. Everybody was like, wow.
Were you surprised?
Last time I remember being in here, we were throwing fists and drinking beer.
Well, and funnily that you say that, because I can't even relate to the Queens at this point. I know CHLY 101.7 is right below the Queens, and I have never been in the Queens yet. Never. Oh. And I've lived here for 13 years, which shame on me. It's a institution, right? Right. But at the end of the day, I mean, I can only imagine you standing at the door, right, as you're kind of going through your world thinking, what were you wearing? Do you remember what you were wearing? This is a true woman talking, women are, we don't care about all the other stuff. It's like, what were you wearing? Were you wearing high heels? I'm sorry.
Yes, I was wearing a black dress.
Yeah.
Knee-length dress with heeled booties.
Very cute.
Right.
Listen, I'm a true girly girl, right? Hair, makeup, shoes, I'm all about that. Yeah. What was the first thing that you bought when you decided that you were going to transition? What was the first thing you chose to buy?
What was the first thing I chose to buy?
Yeah, just out of curiosity. This is just, Curious.
Before I came out, or
Well, in the process, as you were
yeah.
coming out. Yeah.
I don't know. I went on a shopping spree over in Vancouver.
Ah,
One
girl.
I got my paycheck was $4,900, and I scooted onto the ferry. And I'm going to go to Vancouver for the weekend. I went shopping.
Wow, good for
So
you.
I bought some really nice clothes. But I think the first thing I had to master was the makeup,
Yeah.
which I don't think I didn't put lipstick on today.
No, you're doing great. You're doing great. You
But
look wonderful. I got to tell you that that makeup is hard for your whole life. It never
oh,
actually isn't easy. It's
it,
always a
it's
challenge.
always something different,
Always.
right? Something I use all the time, and then all of a sudden I'll use it and I'll go, that doesn't look right. So now I got to get something different. And I was like, how is it like this? Right?
Yeah, it's the $1 billion makeup industry is what that is.
Right.
It's airbrushing on magazines, and it's every color, every year a new season. It's
Right.
it's $1 billion, million, trillion, cajillion. It's an industry in itself. And
Yeah.
as women, we buy into it. And I think men do too, as well. In all fairness, I think that there is, the fashion industry is really, looks after all of us. And that's kind of a
Yes.
cool thing in itself.
Yeah, there's
I
a lot of men that wear makeup,
tons. Yeah, surprisingly.
not just
Yeah.
not just for TV shows and stuff like that.
No,
But there's a
that's
lot
true.
of men out there that do wear makeup.
Yeah, that's very true. And I know that nails are becoming popular for a lot of men as well. Not just
Yeah,
the clear manicure. It used to be where it was they would get the manicure done, but not have any color. And I now
right.
see a lot of color on a lot of men.
Yeah.
And it has nothing to do with gender. It's
No.
preference and personality. And I think that that's something I'd like to share something with you. I'm meaning it in the most innocence of possible. So I've mentioned a couple times on this broadcast that this year I turned 60. And for me, that's a big deal because I never thought I'd come anywhere near this time in life. I'm still acting and feeling like a 21-year-old girl. But when I was 21, I lived in Victoria, although I didn't stay there. I lived there for a few years to go to school. And I was working in a shop called Dalmy's. And Dalmy's was right on Johnson Street and right on the corner, not Johnson, I'm sorry, Yates Street. And it was right on the corner of Douglas and John. It's long gone, Douglas and Yates. It was a big store. And there was a trans woman who came in, and
Huh?
and at first no one would deal with her. And I didn't understand. She was stunning. She was probably 6'5", 6'4", and I'm not exaggerating, beyond tall, had a fabulous body, great figure, wore a like she ended up buying from me a pair of leather pants and beautiful outfits and like all these things. She looked so stunning that I was gobsmacked. And I always wondered, she could carry herself so well, and yet nobody wanted to serve her. Nobody wanted to talk to her. And I didn't get it because I just kept thinking, if I look like that, like, please, like this, like if I could look like that in those clothes, I mean, right?
Right. Right.
Like, how were people when you were shopping
How
in
long ago was
Vancouver?
that?
Oh God, 40 years ago.
4 years?
40, 40,
40. Oh,
40.
okay.
That's what I'm saying. It's way back,
Right.
like
Yeah.
way back.
Conversion therapy was in then.
I know it was, and
Yeah.
actually still is, depending
That's
on where
what
you
kept me
live.
in the closet was
Yeah.
conversion therapy.
Well, and that's this again, let's open that up because conversion therapy is still being used in some areas of the United States. It's still
Yeah.
used in some churches in Canada. Like this is
Not in
not
Canada.
antiquated. Not
It's
anymore.
it's illegal now in Canada.
You don't think that people are still doing it in the
Oh,
closet and pardon the
I
pun?
bet they are because there's a new group now on Facebook called Conversion Therapy Today Canada, and they're in Nanaimo, and they're starting to post propaganda around downtown Nanaimo on conversion
So
therapy.
this is not good. This is not good
No.
at all. So why don't, for our listeners who don't know what conversion therapy is, why don't you give us a share? Explain to people what that is.
I'm really not an authority on that one.
Fair enough.
Um,
Yeah.
I I know it's all psychological stuff, right? But I
Yeah.
don't really know a lot about it. I just
Fair
know
enough.
that I don't want to see that ever happen to anybody.
Oh,
You should be allowed to be yourself,
I think I agree. And I think that you really should be allowed to be
whatever
yourself.
self you want to be.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Period. We're all
Mhm.
supposed to be individuals. We're all different.
Yes.
This is, it is what it is. I don't know a lot about conversion therapy either. What I recall it being just in its simplest form, like you, I'm not an authority on it in any way. But in
Right.
its simplest form, it's the pushing of the package to make people not want to transition. It's that, you were born with this genitalia, you were
Yes.
born this certain way, and this
Yeah.
is how you will stay. And you will, under the therapy format, you need to get over whatever this image is of what you think you're supposed to be or should be, because you're not. You are a man or you are a woman, and end of story. And that's that, right?
Yeah. So
And unfortunately,
that's like I said earlier in the earlier portion
yeah.
that I would have come out in my teens if I thought that I wouldn't get whisked off to a logging camp somewhere and turned into a real man. Right? That's their conversion therapy. That was my own father I was afraid of. Right?
Yeah.
And it turns out that like my dad passed away in 2007,
Sorry.
and turned out that only just a couple of weeks before he passed away, he told me to be myself.
So he was accepting at the
He
end.
yeah, he knew what was going on inside of me. He said,
Yeah.
"Just be you. Don't worry about what everybody else says. Just be you." I was like, and I would have come out right then, but he just passed away, right? And I didn't want to make it awkward, right?
Understood. How is your mother with all of this?
She's gone too.
Was she gone before your father or
Yeah,
after?
yeah. She died in 2003.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they never really saw you in your authenticity.
No, but you know what? Um, when I was just a little girl,
Yeah.
before I started school, my mom used to dress me up after lunch in a dress, and we would dance in the living room to ABBA.
Oh, wow.
That was her favorite band, and so we'd sit there and we'd dance to ABBA. I never thought
Wow.
nothing of it. I was very comfortable, and I felt very comfortable, right? But then when my brother's coming home from school, well, now I got to go get dressed in little boy clothes again. Those didn't feel good,
So do you
right?
think your mother kind of knew all along that you were a special human?
She had three kids, and they were all three boys, and she wanted a girl, right?
Gotcha.
But she did know, because even when in my teens, I opened up my Christmas present one Christmas morning, and it was the Bionic Woman game.
Yahoo!
I was like, "Mom, thanks." Right?
That's
And
cool.
my dad would take me out places on the weekends. He'd go over to one of his friends' places or whatever, do some work over there. He said, "You want to come with me?" I went, "Sure, okay." We get over there, and he'd introduce me as his daughter because I had really long hair. That was in grade 6.
Yeah.
I had past my shoulder hair,
Yeah.
right? So he'd always introduce me as his daughter. And yeah, I swear some of them did think that was his daughter, right?
Wow.
So
What would you tell your parents if you could see them now?
what would I tell them?
Mhm.
That I love them.
Mhm.
I actually tell them that often, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know that they would both be very excited and accepting of this. My brother and my sister-in-law and their kids are all accepting.
Was it easy for them to accept right away, or was there some challenge with that
No,
family dynamic?
it was pretty fast and swift.
Yeah.
My brother knew like next day, and he was like, "Hey, whatever you want to do, I'm backing you up." Right.
Wow.
And then my sister-in-law, we never really had much of a relationship when I was him,
Yeah.
and uh, and then since my change, it's like we're good friends. It's like, wow, this is great.
Must be
This is all
nice
I
to
want
have
for
a
all of them.
supportive, well, of course, right? But it must be nice to have a supportive family. I know that some people that are in your
Oh,
circumstances are not so lucky. And
yeah.
so is it possible, even though you may not have that life experience again, in collaboration with some of the people that you have, like Tammy, we don't want to speak on behalf of Tammy, but there are people that have gone through the difficult parental kind of relationships. So, how could you mentor them, or what does it, what
Well,
does that look like?
um, I had 3 kids too, and the oldest one wanted to kill me.
Physically,
Yeah,
like not just
no,
figuratively.
he wanted to kill me,
Yeah.
and I just could not get past that. I didn't say anything. I thought, I'm just going to let this go. I don't
Yeah.
want to have anything to do with it. That's not mine.
Mhm.
Right? I can't deal with that. My daughter told me I should commit suicide. And then my youngest one uh, never really said nothing. And then I've seen my youngest one now a few times. He's homeless too, or was last time I spoke to him. Uh, but that's it. The other ones want nothing to do with me. It's been 6 years, and I don't get
Absolutely
it.
no contact
You
from your
know,
two kids.
the world, at least in our country, has changed so much in 6 years
Yes.
to being accepting of everybody, right? There's a lot of things that shifted all this. All the Black Lives Matter,
Mhm.
that came up too and shifted more people into going, hey, like, why can't we just be all friends? Why is
Yeah.
this not going to keep happening, right?
Yeah.
And that sort of mentality has helped change the the perception of acceptance, right? Ever since I've had people ask me this before, and I've had trans girls say, what should I do? And uh, the day I came out, I started using the woman's washroom.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go into a men's washroom dressed like a woman. No, right?
Yeah.
I'm not going to do that. Um, so I've always used the woman's washroom, and I've never had anybody say anything to me. I've gone in there, done my business, washed my hands, checked my makeup, might fix it up a little bit, and we have conversations. It's like I was
Yeah.
meant to be there,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely.
And I tell these other girls that, just use the washroom that you feel comfortable going into, right?
You
You've
have
got
to
it.
own yourself, right? You have to
Everybody
like,
has to go to the washroom, no
yeah.
matter what.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if you're presenting as a woman, then use the woman's washroom. If you're presenting as a guy, do not go in the woman's washroom, right?
No, obviously not.
Right.
Right.
And we had one girl in our group who would sometimes come dressed more male and then sometimes come dressed kind of female. And, and then they complained that they went to use the washroom. And I said, well, what were you wearing? And she said what she was wearing. I said, well, you can't do that. People are going to speak to you about it. It's not right.
Yeah, if you're going to identify as a woman, I can see that you really need to go all in the world that you live in, and that can't be easy.
Well, it wasn't, no, I don't know what it's, yeah, it is difficult.
But everything is difficult the first time, wouldn't you
Right.
say?
The first few times it was very difficult. It was walking in going, oh, am I going to get shot? Right? Or am I going to get arrested? Or, but I got to go to the bathroom and I'm not going in there.
Yeah.
Right. So I got to go in, got to go. So I went in, did my business, left. Right. Short and sweet. And then, for the first few times, that was the way it was. That's what it was like. And after that, I was like, nah, this is nothing. I go into a woman's washroom. I'm identifying as a woman. It doesn't matter what how I go pee.
No, exactly, right.
Right.
Doesn't matter. And lots of, yeah. But it does bring me back to 40 years ago and that woman in Dalmies. Because I know that she was one of the rare people that could own her sexuality, not as far as the sexual side of it, but the sexuality as being, I am a woman. I don't know what, and it's none of my business how she identified otherwise. Right. But she presented as this very stunning, and I never forgot her. And it isn't because she was trans. It was because she eluded and exuded such confidence. She knew who she was, and she wasn't going to compromise for anybody. And, 40 years later, I still remember her. I would love to see her today. She had a huge impact on my life. Yeah. Huge impact on my life because no one had ever seen anyone like her. And now, paving the road for people like yourself as well, and you paving that road for others is brilliant. We're going to take a quick station identification here for a moment. I really hope you're enjoying the program. I know I am, and maybe this is, it shouldn't be all about me, but I'm really glad that you're listening to my show. So thank you for tuning in to Act 3 on CHLY 101.7 FM. There was something that I read just the other day, and I came across on one of those Facebook feeds, sort of, how you get those little blurbs, everybody. Well, this one was about Jane Fonda. Jane Fonda said it's much more important to be interested than interesting. And today I am so interested in the stories and the background and everything that's happened to move people to become more of their authentic selves, moment by moment, day by day. So I hope that you're enjoying the program. I also want to let you know that you can now listen to this program on iHeart Radio and on Spotify, as well as on our YouTube station. So please make sure you like and subscribe. Share this information with someone that you know and someone that you love who also may be transitioning. And again, know that it's not a perfect conversation. There's no such thing as perfection. There's only moving forward. And so I'm hoping that you're moving forward with us in community as we break open this dialogue. Thanks again for tuning in. So back in the Zoom booth with me, let me just tell you who we've got. We've got Trish Hope Bingham. She's transparent and trans, and we are having a very deep conversation about what it's like to be herself. And I'm really glad that you're here. Thank you so much again for sharing the way you are. Like, I love how open that you are through this whole conversation, Trish. It has meant so very much. And I know that there are a lot of people that are much earlier on in their journey. And so making the decision to fully incorporate your womanhood, making the decision to have the surgery, and all of the things that went along with that. There's one piece that I'm curious about with that when it came to not just making the decision part of it, but just sort of keeping your mental health in check as you were going through the process. Can you tell us a little bit about the mental health side of things as you were making some pretty big decisions with your body?
health for me is different
Yeah.
than it is for most people that I know anyway.
Yeah. I think that's important that it's an individual experience for sure.
I have the ability so far to just be able to keep myself happy.
Yeah.
Right. It's positivity, right?
Yeah.
Like when I wake up in the morning, it's going to be a great day.
Yep.
Nothing's going to ruin it. And I don't let anything ruin it. You know,
Yeah.
things happen. Things, uh, things happened the other day, and the trans march that we're going to have at the end of March
Yep.
is going to have to be scaled way down.
Why is that?
Because we lost the one sponsor I thought we had. I actually found out that they can't help.
Oh no.
So,
Oh no.
so,
So this is a call to action then, if anybody wants to help support.
This comes out of my pocket now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
we
I
want
got to scale it down and not do as much. I wanted it to be nice down at the park and rent the Lions gazebo thing there and have a nice thing. People get up and talk about trans and stuff like that. But that's not going to happen this year.
Oh no. Is it just too expensive to get a venue?
It's probably going to cost about $600 to $700 to do the thing like that. Eh?
Wow.
So this one, I'm just going to make an event page on Facebook, make it public and share it, and then we'll deal with what comes as we go. Right? To have an event at the park costs money, but to have a protest, which is what we're calling it, from City Hall down to the park, it doesn't cost anything.
So it sounds like a protest it is right now until some money starts getting flowed through. There's something to be said for that for sure. Yeah. Well, I will ensure, I'll let you know that I will promote this for you as well. Just I'm saying it publicly right now that if you hear me talk about March 31st, do you have a time it's going to start?
2 p.m.
2 p.m. March 31st.
City Hall where the flags are.
City Hall to Mafio. Yes?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So I will make sure that we promote that as well. And it's called the Transgender Day of Visibility. Is that the name of the march?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I'll make sure that we put that, and I will put that as well. If you are watching us through YouTube, then I'll make sure that it's down the bottom there as well for us. Okay. All right. Okay. I think that it's important that, obviously we want the visibility. And I also, we were talking a little bit earlier that based on your size, you had a few less issues, and you were talking about some of the smaller, physically smaller people who are turning trans as well. Is there a group, is there a family of trans friendly, and what is it, by the way, let me cut to the chase even before that, because I'm stumbling over my words, which tells me there's a question that needs to come first. What does it mean to be an ally?
Okay, to be an ally is being supportive, and not just in the presence of a transgender person, but when you're talking to a bunch of cisgender people, and somebody says something, it's your responsibility as an ally to say, "Hey, that's not right."
Gotcha.
Right? And to support trans people. That's an ally.
So it's more than just making space. It's about standing up and
doing something about it.
Something about it when something ill is going on. Don't tolerate that, which we don't want to tolerate with anything that goes against humanity as a whole is really.
It's becoming more commonplace now.
Yeah.
That people just don't do that anymore. Right. it's common sense.
So I know that there's some movement about being non-binary, and people are being more aware of the fact that some people identify as more than one individual, even as
They, them.
is common, they, them is
Yeah.
quite common now.
Yeah.
And I know even through the conversation several years ago, I have some LGBTQ2 spirit friends, and one of them was correcting me in the way that I had spoken about her, because she wanted to teach me that it was important that people are aware that people identify differently these days. And so in honor of what she said, I've tried to make that my practice, because I don't want to offend. And I think that, we've learned this in many, many different areas of society, is that people are trying to be more supportive than they are trying to offend in any way. So it's okay to ask for the question. It's okay to say, how do you wish to be identified? Or if you hear someone say, I'm Kathy, I identify as she, her, that this is part of that growth process for us to understand.
When I introduced myself on the phone, because I used to have the hardest time. That was my biggest dysphoria, was being able to talk on the phone.
Well,
or
it's
go through a drive-through.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And you'd always get sir. I always get sir. I'm like, oh my God. And so now when when somebody picks up the phone, I say, hello, my name's Trish Hope Bingham, she, her. And then that automatically sets the ground rules that I'm she, her. I'm a woman. Don't call me sir. Right?
Right? It's very simple.
And it's working. It's working. It's getting me on the phone more now. I'm able to get through that process of talking on the phone. It,
I'm also noticing that there's a change from Mr., Mrs., Ms., and there's now MX, which is non-binary, right? Starting to be seen in Canada a little bit more often, MX. I'm not sure how to pronounce MX, to be honest with you. Do you?
No.
Mix.
So yeah.
I appreciate when I'm writing, but I'm starting to see more and more where MX is coming up, right? When you're doing drop down menus for different things on computers, if you're, filling out paperwork of any kind. So I'm grateful actually to see that we have opened up the non-binary conversation for people to identify in the paperwork. Speaking of paperwork, how was it for you getting your paperwork to shift over? Right?
That was such a process for me.
Yes, let's talk about it.
Because I didn't have anybody to ask. Nobody had done this yet.
Right.
That's how new out I was. That there wasn't very many people out there. There wasn't any trans people out there that had gone through this process yet.
Yeah.
So I was kind of pioneering the way to figure out how it's all going to go, right? And so I went to the police station. I did the fingerprint thing so they could send it away to Ottawa. I went to the Access Center. I got the forms all there. The girls there were very nice to me. They helped me fill them all out. I paid my, I think it all total with the police check, which was $50. The whole thing come to about $250 to send it away. And then a couple weeks later, I got a certificate of name change and gender change. So my gender was female.
Yes.
At that point, and that was in May of 2017.
Yeah.
So, and then of course, you got to go now and change your name everywhere else, right? You're not allowed to use your old name.
Well, now
Uh,
it's formal, right? You formally shifted it into your new
yeah.
name
I
and
got
you're
my birth
formally,
certificate
yeah.
that said my new name, and everything else is the same except for said female, right? Now I just got my passport too, a couple 3-4 weeks ago,
Mhm.
and that was an easy process. I went down to the office down here in Nanaimo. I walked in. The girl helped me fill out the forms. I didn't have I was turning in my old passport, but it was more than a year out of date, so I had to redo the whole thing. So I had to get a new, what do they call that? Cosigner.
Signature or co-signer, yeah. To prove who you are, yeah.
Right. So I had to get that. So I came back the next day with the same paperwork, and the money cost me $140 for a 10-year passport. And 2 weeks later, I got the passport in the mail. I'm like, wow,
Brilliant.
right?
See, it's moving so much better now.
Oh, way better. But I was so proud of that passport.
I bet. I bet
Got
you were
my,
even more proud of the birth certificate. I would think more so even than the passport at first.
oh yeah, I was. Even the name change certificate, that was amazing all in itself.
Yeah.
And then the birth certificate,
Mhm.
that was and my driver's license, right?
Yes.
Like that
Right.
was so liberating to get my driver's license changed, my health card, and all
Did you go
that.
shopping afterwards? Because I would have.
You know what? I went to Walmart once,
Uh-huh.
and this lady still works at Walmart, but I went to pay for my stuff at the customer service desk because I had something to return. And she looked me up and down, and she looked at my credit card, and she says, "Well, you're gonna have to go outside and get changed to come back in." Um,
What?
being this person, and she handed me back my credit card. I went, "Whoa!" Right? I said, "I want to speak to your manager."
You think? Oh my
Mhm.
God.
And I understand she got 2 weeks off without pay for it, but every time I go there now, she's so nice to me.
Well, sometimes that's what it takes to sort of end the misogyny and the garbage that goes out there that is absolutely unnecessary, right? Just,
I don't take advantage of that, but I mean,
no, I
she's so
hear you.
nice. I could do anything, and she, but I always just smile at her. So, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm having a
Well,
good day.
sometimes it's important to have that training ground. I can't believe that we're nearing the end of the program already. We just have a few minutes left. It blows my mind because I feel like I've got like a million more questions that I want to ask you, but I know that, some of the main ones that I had in my mind, I have asked. There is one more though, and I want to talk about it. I don't believe that we spoke about it in our last episode. And we won't be able to spend too long with it because it'll end up being a cliffhanger, and we don't want to go there either. But there is, for a lot of people, that question about transsexuality, men who are LGBTQ two spirit, and that's the HIV conversation. And so, again, with respect and just sort of short kind of liberation that goes with that as well. There used to be such a tremendous fear around HIV. There still is, that's not gone, but it is much better than it has been in the past.
Yeah,
How does the trans community come together when it comes to HIV and the concern that is there? Is it still, is it an antiquated conversation, or is it much more accepted, understood, or non-existent even?
I don't think it really. I know people that have HIV, and they're zero trace, I think it's called, or something.
Yep,
Uh,
absolutely. Mhm.
yeah, and they can't pass it on.
Yeah.
So the fear of HIV is letting up, right? Um, but it's not. I mean, we do a lot of things for uh, AIDS Vancouver Island,
Yep.
we do a lot of fundraisers, stuff like that with them. So, I mean, the conversation's always there, right? And every time I meet somebody on dating or whatever, I ask them.
Yeah.
I asked them that straight out because I know if you have it, you have to say yes.
Yeah.
Right. They're trying to change that, but I don't know. I just I want to know, right?
Yeah.
So.
But it's like any other sexually transmitted disease. You need to inform your sexual partner, regardless of your gender, like, I mean, this is not something that is outside of the norm. You know, I'm a divorcee. When I date, I ask the same questions you're asking. You know, I don't want to put anyone at risk or be at risk, right? I mean, that's the nature. We're doing it now with COVID, right? Have you been vaccinated, right? I mean, let's be, in order to be advocates for our own physical health, mental health, and otherwise, we need to be brave enough to ask the questions. And thank you for being so brave to answer all the questions too. I know that some of them were pretty open out there for community if they have never heard the responses come back the way you have. And I just am so delighted that you've been able to share them the way you have. So thank you. So Trish, I'm going to go, we've got like 2 or 3 minutes left of the program and that's about it, but enough time for us to sort of break open the life lesson. If you have, I'm just going to take 30 seconds here before we do that or less. If you have just tuned in, I wish I had tuned in a little while ago. Because I think that Trish and my conversation, extending from our last episode of Act 3 on CHLY 101.7, this is part 2 of that conversation, talking about being transparent and trans and what that means in our community, what that means to us as individuals, what does it mean as allies, all that groovy stuff. So I encourage you to make sure that you check us out either on our YouTube station or through iHeart Radio or Spotify. And I also would like you very much to please tune into Act 3 on Shaw Spotlight, because we are happily in our episode and we love it when you tune in. We're filming actually pretty quick here for our second episode coming up real soon. So we look forward to inviting you to see our new program there as well. Check us out on Shaw Cable 4 and Channel 150. And finally, I hate to say goodbye to my guests because I don't want to, but we're going to leave with the life lesson. We're going to leave with that little bit of inspiration, which I think has been pretty consistent all the way through. But if there was anything, Trish Hope Bingham, that you could imbibe on our community about your journey, about all of this conversation we've had over the last couple of hours and couple of days at the radio show, what would that look like for you?
Well, one thing I wanted to say before we part ways is that if anybody has any questions, I am very much an open book. You know, I'm open. I don't hide nothing from nobody. But if anybody has any questions and want to reach out to me, I'm on Facebook, Trish Hope Bingham. Mention the show so I know who you are and I don't block you for being some kind of a creep or something.
Yeah, right?
Somebody so on Facebook.
Somebody said about that, right? Right.
But yeah, that's what I want to say. You know, I like you said, I'm very open. There's no question I won't answer if I can. Right. Yeah. And if there's something I can't answer, I'll tell you. Right. And then as soon as I get off of this thing, I'm going to go and look it up.
I love it. Well, thank you for that, Trish Hope Bingham. Very, very grateful to have you on the program today. Thanks again for sharing your wisdom with all of us and for making the world a better place because you're in it. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy.
So if you've heard this show, I'm really glad that you did. And so now's the time that we can do a little bit of a call to action. My call to action today is that on March the 31st, Trish is still with me in case I screw this up. March 31st, 2 o'clock, City Hall, under the flags, a march down to Mafio Sutton Park, Transgender Day of Visibility. Let's be realistic here.
Yes.
Everybody has the right to be seen, heard, and
Yes.
everybody matters. So show your solidarity, come down
And
to
everybody
Okay.
has the right to be an ally too.
And everybody has a right to be an ally, and I'm proud to be an ally, and I'll stand up for you any day of the week, darling, any day. All right. Take care of you. Take care of the audience. Thank you so much. All right, everybody. Bye-bye. That's it for us today on CHLY 101.7 FM. Act 3 is the show. We'll see you next Monday. Have yourself a great day. Bye for now.